Welcome back, everyone, to the Awful Takes podcast special album review. How we do album reviews is very simple, a little different probably than most other reviewers out there. We recommend albums to each other that either we've heard or haven't heard, mostly ones we haven't heard, at least for me.
Or from me sometimes, yeah.
And then we break it down song by song, kind of go through each song. And then at the end of it, we give a song recommendation out of the album. So we'll do either like top 4 or 5 songs that we think you should check out if maybe you don't have the whole time for an album, and kind of gets the basis across of, the best aspects of the album in general. And we don't give a score. That's kind of was one of my things going into it is I don't really want to give albums 10s out of 10s, things like that. I just feel like now in music culture, everything's very personal. Everything is unique to the listener. So slapping a number on it just, to me, doesn't really do things justice. And especially with music in general, it can grow on you and your taste can change and things like that, Yeah.
It could also grow off you too. Maybe you don't love it as much as you used to, but it's still an interesting look and perspective on the album and music.
And with albums, I just love to give songs the time of day. Sometimes I watch music reviewers and they just skip over some of my favorite songs and they don't really get into it. And I just want to kind of change music. Well, obviously I'm not going to have any change in this at all, but just kind of usher in just us talking more about like production, the overall lyrics, interpretations, things like that. So what are we talking about, Wallied?
Yeah, so we're talking about an album I've been really into recently and a band that I've been obsessed with recently. Today we're talking about Women in Music Part 3 by HAIM. And for me, HAIM has been a band that I've heard about on and off for the last few years. I would say my introduction to them was actually through the Calvin Harris song, Pray to God, actually. Wow. And so that was from like a long, long time ago. And then it wasn't until recently because they featured on Charlie XCX's album the song Warm, which I really love. And then Alana HAIM actually was in Paul Thomas Anderson's film Licorice Pizza, which I thought was okay, but I thought her performance was great in it. And so they're kind of a band that I've heard about for a long, long time. They've done like features and production for other artists. They were on Vampire Weekend's record, Father of the Bride. Danielle HAIM did a lot of features for that album. And so I don't really have too much of like a connection with HAIM before this year. This was just kind of more of a band I got into the past couple of months. And they're just like a band that I finally decided to do a deep dive into and finally like give their music a listen. And so, for the past couple of months, it's been just really nice to just check out all their music and their only 3 albums that they have, and kind of just see their progression and evolution and how they've refined their sound and how they've worked together as like a group and everything. This is, for me, so far my favorite of theirs. They have a new album coming out actually in next month, which I'm really, really excited for. But I would say for now, this is my favorite of theirs so far. I feel like the way it blends different styles of genres, I think is done really well and doesn't feel like kind of forced or anything. It feels very cohesive to the album. Mm-hmm. And I feel like all of them work together really, really well. You can tell they love just being together, which I really appreciate. And lyrically, at times, it just hits really hard for me, which we can get into and everything. So, Nabaahi, what was your experience with HAIM and everything like that?
Funny enough, Spotify recommended one of these songs for me a long time ago, probably closer to when the deluxe version of the album came out. It's one of the bonus songs on there. And I remember it instantly, like the moment I heard the song, we'll get into it, just grabbed my attention. And I was like, holy crap, this song's really good. But I don't ever remember checking out the rest of the album, which I don't know why. I just never really kind of sought it out. So it was nice now to finally hear the rest of it and kind of know more of their style, more of the things they kind of strive for on this album and everything. Obviously, I've heard their name before. They've worked with some of my other artists that I love. So their name was kind of always floating around in my headspace. However, it was nice to kind of like fully get into one of their full length efforts, you know. And yeah, this album was really, really great to listen to. So
nice. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, we'll get into the first track here, which is easily one of my favorite intros I've heard in a while. Los Angeles, which is just like this. The way this track opens is incredible with this like awesome little sax line that goes in and everything. And just all around incredible instrumental, which you'll probably hear me say throughout this album, but the instrumentals are just top notch on this record and everything. It's just that feeling for me of like, it feels like you're lost, feeling kind of like lost in like your early 20s and trying like to find a place that you can call home and everything, was at least from my interpretation of what the lyrics and everything. And already I just really love the singing on this song and everything, and the way it starts up. It really gives you an idea of like what you're in for with the song and everything. And I just absolutely love it so much. So yeah, how'd you feel about Los Angeles?
This one is great. Really sets the tone for the rest of what you're going to hear. The drum beat's just very consistent. It's a nice foundation for the rest of the music. Love the layering vocals in the bridge. I just think it's just really cool. That's one thing I love with this group in general, is just the vocals that they have and how well they work together. Just sounds different in today's kind of day and age of music. You know, it sounds kind of older, but also still kind of fresh, modern, and new.
Yeah. I love the way they harmonize together too. It's like ear candy, honestly, for me.
And one of the aspects that I just love in general is just, I feel like they found the perfect balance of sounding raw, but also polished as well. I feel like at times it just sounds like you'd go into a local venue and you'd watch like a smaller band play. That's what this album really feels like to me, but in a great way. The way they record the instruments and everything doesn't sound super clean or super nice, but it still sounds polished in a way. I feel like they found that very great balance.
Yeah, exactly. Both. It gives it this kind of like timeless feel to a lot of the tracks and everything. And it's so interesting to hear it with this album, because like you hear their past two albums, you know, the first album is a lot more polished and everything. And then their second album is kind of like somewhat of a mix of both. But I feel like in this one, like they definitely were able to like find that perfect balance, I think, really, really well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is such a great opener. Fantastic opener all around. This is one I've been coming back to a lot more recently. And so, yeah, we get to the next track, The Steps. Summer vibe is like kind of how I feel with this song. It has just such a perfect vibe. The chorus is so catchy. It's so soothing. I love it very much. It's very passionate. And just the guitars that come in and everything are so, it just adds such a nice touch to what you're listening to. And then honestly, it has this kind of like melancholic feel to the lyrics too, of like trying to be there for somebody, you know, taking the steps to be with somebody in a relationship, you know, as committed as they are in this song. It gives such a perfect description of like that feeling of like things aren't going well in the relationship, but they're taking the steps to like figure it out and everything like that. And the bridge too hits very hard for me also. I love the bridge on this track. So
yeah,
overall, The Steps, Nabaahi.
For me, obviously I grew up playing guitar, so I love hearing the layering guitars. They have different effects on them. One of the kind of defining staples of this album is, I feel like for the guitars, they went for like this kind of flanger effect, and it sounds really great. And typically I'm not really one for those type of effects, yet they really make it work. And I feel like it is a good contrast to their voice. And I love it in music when you have two things that maybe don't really work together, but they bring out the best aspects of each other. So when you hear the vocals and the guitar, it's just like this unknown pairing. And also I love the bridge acoustic guitar. It really sets up a nice texture for the solo that you kind of hear later on. The bridge as a whole, I just really, really love. Obviously the lyrics are very, very poignant, you know, and it gets across a lot of emotion. But yeah, this song was great. Really enjoyed it.
There's like a kind of an oddly nostalgic feel also too with the track mentioning with the flanger and everything, you know. It definitely just gives it that like, I guess that past relationship type of feeling, I would say. All right, and then we get to the third track, I Know Alone, which is a lot different actually.
Yeah.
Compared to the last two we heard. It definitely goes for like that more drum and bass kind of electronic beat feel, but it doesn't feel out of place surprisingly. It actually feels like a nice little progression to what you just listened to and everything like that. It's a nice change of pace for sure. Lyrically, I think it is one of the best portrayals of loneliness I've heard on a track and everything, and being too open with that person, you know, because with the last track, you know, you're going in the steps of like the relationship and everything. And in this one, it's like she's shared too much and it feels like it's now being kind of used against her and everything. That's kind of how I felt. And that's how I kind of viewed this track lyrically, especially compared to the last one you heard. So yeah, how did you feel with this one?
Yeah, I love this one. Obviously the beats switch up, everything just kind of totally changes from the first two. Yeah, it has similarities. It has a through line. That's one thing I think is very important if you're going to have kind of drastic changes and things. But this one isn't too drastic. Love the vocal effects. It just adds like this totally kind of different feeling when listening. And then the lyrics, obviously, like there gets to a point where, you know, you're going through a rough time and you kind of not overshare, but you kind of maybe feel a little too much when you're around your friends and things, and they kind of don't know how to handle it. So they kind of put a wall up in between you and them, you know, and those moments can happen in life where you share maybe a little too much, you maybe are in your feelings a little too much, and maybe at the time like your friends just don't know how to handle it, you know.
Right,
so
wow.
I love that opening line of, you know, calling all my friends but they won't pick up, and it's a hard feeling to go through when you're kind of left to yourself, you know. It can be very, very dangerous, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
But this is a great song. I love this song.
Nice. Yeah, so then we get to the next track, Up From a Dream, which is just incredible. Again, the instrumental breaks, especially in the second half, are just so incredible. It's very dreamy, honestly. I really love it a lot. And I love the juxtaposition of like the lyrics and how it's like she's feeling sleepless, and then just also how like time flies by, you know, time just kind of drips with you and everything like that. And I think the track perfectly encapsulates that feeling of like you can't sleep, but you want to get into that dream state. How'd you take away this track?
Yeah, this one, it can sound frantic, you know, with everything going on in the track. It can maybe be a little distracting, but I feel like it keeps you engaged enough to where you still are along for the ride. And so that's a very kind of hard thing to tackle in music, you know, when you start to have different effects and you start to have that franticness. However, that kind of does reflect that kind of dream-like aspects, you know.
Right.
Come on, like dreams are just so out there and so weird and everything. So I felt like it portrayed it very well. So yeah, this was a nice different color on this album as like a palette, you know.
Yeah, and you could say it kind of wakes you up too, also, which
definitely.
is kind of funny. All right, so then we get to the next track, Gasoline, which is also absolutely incredible and fantastic. The instrumental on this one is just phenomenal. Again, that summer vibe I was just talking about with the steps, like this I feel like takes that summer vibe to like another level. It cranks it up to like a 10 for me, and the vocals are just incredible. When she goes into the chorus, it's like, wow, you can't help but sing along. Every time I hear that chorus, I just gotta sing along to it. And the lyrics are great, and it kind of just shows how like this partner is almost like an addiction. It's like kind of like a drug and everything like that she can't get away from. Lyrically, it's just fantastic again. And also a big surprise for me with this track too is Taylor Swift is featured on it and everything, which is kind of a rarity. I don't think she does a lot of features that much.
Yeah,
so
honestly.
Yeah. How did you feel with Gasoline and everything?
The vocal melodies of this song are super pleasing. I feel like that's something that they hit the most on this song is you hear these melodies and everything, and they sound super pleasing to the ear. And it has a consistent flow, and the beat and the guitars, they do a really good job of aiding the vocals, you know. They don't sound too distracting. They don't sound out of place. They have that nice kind of layering for the vocals to kind of rest on top and really just shine above everything, you know. That's my thing, is like when artists hit on those really good kind of addictive melodies, I feel like you don't need too much else to kind of distract you, you know?
Sometimes they take it a little bit too far.
Exactly.
But I think this song is like perfectly just encapsulates it really well. That doesn't feel like it goes too far in either the instrumental or vocal direction.
Yeah. So yeah, this song was really great for me. Love the lyrics and everything. Love the kind of outro and everything. It was just really nice.
Yeah. This is very, very, very pleasing to listen to. And it's just one that I've gone back to so much. And the Taylor Swift feature also, she's kind of hidden on the track. She's definitely like in the harmonies there somewhere. So
definitely.
That was also just like, whoa, that's really cool. So, all right. And then we get to the next track. This is probably one of my favorite 3-track runs on any record, but we get to 3 a.m. with Thundercat, believe it or not. Yeah, which is also a very different change of pace for the album too. It's a lot more of like a smooth, like R&B type of track. And the chorus again is super, super catchy. It's definitely got like that late night vibe that I really, really love about the track. And I love Thundercat's opening where he's like giving this like voicemail and everything like that. It adds a lot of humor to the song that I definitely think you need, especially from some of the more darker songs lyrically and everything like that. So yeah, how did you feel with this one?
I like the vibe switch of this song. Very, very much a contrast to the last song. Yet it still has a kind of connective glue between obviously the last song and then the next one. And this song has like a kind of subtle evolution throughout it. You know, I feel like it starts in one place, and by the time the song finishes, you are left with something that you weren't really expecting, you know, which I think is great. That's a very hard thing to do in music. So I really appreciate that they went for it, you know?
Yeah, it's absolutely, you know. And I love the way the track ends with like the alarm clock and everything. I was like, that's perfect. Yeah. So then we get to the next track, Don't Wanna, which means a lot to me. This is a song that I feel like is so hopeful and optimistic. And I love that the song encapsulates it so well in the chorus of, I don't want to give up on you. I think it is so easy for people to give up on somebody, especially if you feel like things aren't working and everything. But I love that the song shows that, like, even if she's close to giving up, she doesn't want to give up on this person because she loves them very much, you know? And that's how it feels sometimes when you have friends or family, you know? You feel like there's only so much you can do, you know, but you still are going to do your best to be there for them as much as you can. And I just love it so much. It brings me to tears, honestly, especially when it hits the chorus. And instrumentally, it's just absolutely fantastic. Again, a different instrumental change, but it, again, doesn't feel jarring at all. And it just feels like a kind of like snap back to reality type of thing after you've heard 3 a.m. and everything like that. It's so beautiful. And honestly, it feels like a warm hug from like a friend or like a family member for me. So how did you feel with this one? Yeah,
this is definitely one of my favorites off the album. The bass of this song is very groovy. The guitar does so well in accenting the vocals and everything. It has a nice swing to it. I don't know. I think this one is more straightforward and simple. But I think because it is, I like the simplicity of it, you know?
Yeah.
I like it when songs kind of have just that kind of baseline message and it just sticks to that, you know, because that message is very powerful and you don't really need to expand on it too much, you know? So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite things about this song. It just has an energy unlike
It's just
any other
such
song.
a positive, massive,
Yeah.
positive energy that
And
I love so much.
it just feels heartwarming in a way. And it goes for, granted, I'm probably a sucker for this type of thing, but the outro really just picks up the energy even more.
Yeah.
And the drums just start hitting harder. The guitars hit harder, the vocals harder. And it's kind of like one of those moments when you're in a concert and that's when everyone kind of starts singing. They start, getting into it. And I don't know. I just love that when songs do that kind of switch up. Granted, you're hearing the same thing you've been hearing,
right?
Yet the energy makes it different in a way.
It's a nice finale. It's
exactly.
a nice repetition and everything.
And when that music kicks in and it goes a little harder, that's when you get like the chills on your arms and you're like, wow, this is just good on its own 2 feet. Yeah. This is a really great song.
Easily. Yeah. And it's crazy that we're like 7 tracks in and it just keeps surprising you. And you're just finding so much stuff to love about the album and everything. So then we get to the next track and everything. Another Try, which is also very incredible. I just love the lyrics on this one, especially after hearing Don't Wanna. Like, she's getting a second chance. She's getting a second chance at love. And I love like the last lines of like, I'm wishing you the best, baby. It is so powerful. And it's just like, again, that feeling of like, you want the best for this person. You're going to do everything in your power to just be there for this person. And it gets it across so well and so creatively, with the backing vocals and everything, and with the chorus and the incredible instrumental. Like I can't stress enough how fantastic these instrumentals are. And I just love when the pace changes in the second half and everything. It feels like an explosion almost of sounds and everything. And it's just so well done.
Yeah.
And it's super breathtaking also. Like I'm just still mind blown about it, even hearing it for like the 3rd or 4th time. So yeah, how did you feel with this one, Nabaahi?
This is definitely a song that I need to come back to more. This is a song that I feel like on first listen, you need more than just a first listen. You need this song to kind of grow. You need this song to latch on to the feelings that you have in your head. So I will say on first listen, it was a little bit of a challenge listening to this song, but however, I don't feel like that's a disservice. I know this song, there are aspects of this song that I really, really like. I just feel like I do need to kind of sit down with it maybe a little bit more, give it more listens, give it a better time of day. Because I will just say on first listen, I felt like the vocal effects were just maybe a little too much. Other than that, honestly, it's still, I feel like a good swing. I feel like it still really goes for it. So this is one I definitely see myself coming back to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. And then we get to the next track, Leaning on You, which is pretty good. I love the more, again, kind of the instrumental change that we've been talking about. It's a lot more folky, a lot more country for sure, which surprisingly really fits really well for HAIM. But yeah, I really like the lyrics of like her kind of feeling dependent and having somebody there with you. You've finally given this person a second chance. You're getting a second chance at love and everything. And this is kind of like level 2 of like the relationship, basically. And I think the track perfectly encapsulates it pretty well on the track and everything. Doesn't really feel like showy or anything, but I would just say overall this is like a pretty solid one that I do really like.
Yeah. I love the laid back feel of this one. It's very simple, just sounds super baseline sound. This song was definitely, at least I feel like was just written with guitar and melody in mind. And I feel like they just kind of went with that and really kind of let it speak for itself. However, this song paints like a landscape in your head. You see images when you're listening to this song. It invokes a certain feeling. So yeah, I really like this track. It is very laid back. This is one I definitely see just put on and you just kind of live in the moment, I guess.
Yeah. You rock your chair to it.
Exactly.
And then we get to the next track here, I've Been Down, which is really great. Again, we go back to a little different shift, and this is great, groovy, instrumental all around. This one is just, this is awesome. I love the chorus very much. Super, super catchy. The sax outro is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I will say my one complaint is that there is not enough saxophone on this album because, my God, the saxophone moments on this album are so good. And I love the little spoken word that we get kind of throughout the track also, which was a big surprise. Usually spoken word stuff is kind of hit or miss with me, but I felt like this really worked for this track and everything. So yeah, how did you feel with this one?
I love the laid back feel, great guitars, very, like Wallied said, very groovy. It has a swing to it. This one was great. This one is definitely a bit more of a high point on the later part of the album. Has a nice kind of energy pickup. Really enjoyed it. Yeah,
nice.
Really good.
And then we get to the next track here, Man from Magazine, which I think is good overall. It's not my favorite personally. Yeah. I do love some of the songwriting on this one. Obviously, it's still very top notch. However, I will say I do wish it was just a little bit longer, and I do think the instrumental was just okay overall. Just kind of felt a little bland.
I did feel like this one, they were tapping on something great. I feel like they could have just given it just maybe a little more time in the oven a little bit, maybe try to go about it in like a different way. And like Wallied said, it could have been longer. I feel like this was almost there for me. Yeah. But it's just something that just kind of fell more towards the back burner for me, that I just kind of was like, yeah, it's there, but I don't really see myself coming back to this one.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
And then we get to the next track here, All That Ever Mattered, which I think overall was pretty good. First time I wasn't too crazy about it, but it's grown on me just a little bit and everything. I do like the instrumental, especially when the screeching kind of noises come in. It kind of feels like a noise pop type of track. And then great lyrics, obviously, of like her kind of like moving past this person. Like they don't have maybe the best for you. You've already given them another chance, and it's just like, yeah, it's not working this time. And it's like, you got to learn to move on and everything. And I think the track does a really good job of portraying that and everything. I really liked this one overall and everything. It's a nice little penultimate track to the album and everything. So how did you feel with this one?
I liked it. I like the electronic feel of it. I feel like it has kind of a different fingerprint from everything else. However, maybe it could have been just executed a little better. I feel like parts of it didn't really fit together all that well, and I feel like maybe they could have tried to go about it in a different way maybe. I just feel like overall the execution fell a little flat for me. However, I feel like this one did kind of go for different things and different aspects. Overall, I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the most experimental out of all of the tracks, which is kind of a surprising thing to say and everything. But we get to the final track on the album, FUBT or FUBT, I think. But yeah, this one for me is it's hopeful and heartbreaking for me. Lyrically, I think it's just, again, top notch, like I've been saying. I feel like my interpretation is that she's just finally trying to get over this person, but on the inside, you still somewhat care for them, you know, which is kind of that like toxicity of like being in a toxic relationship like that. I just love the minimal instrumental on this track. I think it fits pretty well for the album and kind of what Danielle is singing about and everything like that. It felt like a nice little bow tie to like just everything you listen to. It feels like you've gone on this journey with Danielle and like her relationship and her whole experience of this journey and being with this person. So how did you feel with this final track?
The statement feel of it. I feel like in music and stuff, you know, sometimes it's up to interpretation, but sometimes there are those songs that are very much like, no, this is a statement. This is how it is, you know, and I always appreciate when artists kind of do that. However, I feel like maybe they could have pushed it just a little bit more. I feel like it does it very well, and it is kind of a nice end point. However, I just feel like there was maybe just a little bit more on the table that they could have kind of honed in on just a little bit. However, again, it's a great track, and I really do like how definitive statement it is. It's really nice.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, I could definitely see it having a bit more of a grander ending, but I can kind of understand and see where they're coming from with this track and everything, you know, especially because the first track does start off like a bit more grand and orchestral and everything, whereas I feel like the last track is kind of more like you're in this kind of like melancholic state now after listening to it. So that was kind of at least my interpretation for it, maybe. So, so yeah, I guess that was overall Women in Music Part 3 by HAIM. This is an album that I really love a lot. Again, I think it really encapsulates the feelings of heartbreak and giving people second chances while also trying to take care of yourself and everything like that, and having that feeling of like insomnia. It really portrays it in such a way that it's kind of hard to put into words sometimes, honestly. And instrumentally, it's fantastic. I think it's awesome too, because Rostam, from who used to be on Vampire Weekend, was actually the main producer on this and everything. So that right there was just like a big plus for me, and I'm happy to see Rostam doing work for HAIM and everything like that. If you want, we could talk a little bit, I guess, about the bonus tracks and everything. I think they're all right. I would say probably Summer Girl is probably my favorite out of the three. I don't know how you feel with the bonus tracks.
Like them all. For me, the shining point of it all is Now I'm In It. I feel like for me, that was the one I originally heard that Spotify just kind of threw at me, and man, is it a great track. I love the bass line of it. Just is a nice, consistent throughout the song. I can't imagine them like playing that live and you gotta string that bass the whole time.
Yeah, right.
But man, that melody is just so pleasing. The vocal effects,
the pianos that come in are really good too.
So good. Yeah. I love the chorus of it. Man, that's one of my favorite songs. I just sing it a lot. I throw it in a DJ set every now and then. And
nice.
It's just a super nice kind of hidden gem in terms of this album. For me, really enjoy it. Every time I'm just like, how is this song not more popular than it is?
Right, yeah.
And it granted, I guess I will say it does have a very bonus track type feel that is very, very different from
the rest of the
else
album.
on the album.
Exactly.
So I do get that it's kind of its own thing. However, it is still really enjoyable.
Nice, yeah. For me, Summer Girl, I'm sucker for the saxophones and everything, so I'm like, perfect. And it has like a nice little trip hop beat too. And I usually don't mention music videos during the discussion, but I thought it was pretty cool that they got Paul Thomas Anderson to direct the music video. So I was like, that's a big plus for me also and everything. But overall, really great album, really amazing album that I recommend to you guys. Man, there's so many incredible tracks on this. So I guess I'll give 4. Yeah, I'll give 4, which is a first. So my personal favorites for sure, Don't Wanna, easily just one of the best tracks. I think it definitely gives you an idea of what you'll be in for with the album and everything, and just lyrically and instrumentally, it's absolutely phenomenal. Up From a Dream is another one I'd recommend. That's really fantastic. That gives you more an idea of like the dream state of the album and everything, and the insomnia side of the record. And then 3 a.m. for my boy Thundercat. Love just the overall instrumental, nice little smooth R&B track, And again, it gives you more an idea of like the genre hopping that HAIM does really, really well on this album. And then for me, I'll say Another Try. Nice little deep cut. Great deep cut on the album and everything for sure. So those would be my personal 4 favorites to recommend to you guys.
I feel like overall this album as a whole has just a great feel to it. If you're ever just in a zone where you just gotta like work or do something maybe a bit more laid back, you're at home, this is like a nice album just kind of put on and just have in the background. It really just invokes a lot of feelings, and it has such a great sound. Again, one of my favorite things about this album is it sounds raw in a lot of its production, but it's also polished enough that it doesn't sound too like unmixed or
it's like a vintage kind of feel.
Yeah. Really nice. So that's one of my main takeaways with this album as a whole. 4 tracks I'd recommend. Definitely Los Angeles. I felt like it was just great. Really sets up a good vibe and everything. I would recommend I Know Alone for a nice kind of different feel, different switch up. Really just has its own kind of statement throughout this whole album. Definitely Don't Wanna. That's just one of the ones that's been on repeat for me. And then bonus track, Now I'm In It. Like that's one of the things that I first heard that just really kind of put these girls on the spotlight for me. So definitely if you get the bonus version, check out Now I'm In It. Like that's a great song. So probably those 4.
To the yes.
Yep.
Nice.
I guess little throw out there. Like I am excited for their new album. I listened to their singles. It sounds like
Relationships is really absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And the second teaser track they released was also just absolutely incredible. Like, everybody's trying to figure me out. That was just such an incredible track, and I really liked the third track and everything. And so, yeah, I'm very, very excited for the album and everything.
Yeah,
I'm only a month away.
That's crazy. I didn't realize it was still a little further out, but I mean, I'm excited. That's cool. Yeah.
So I'm definitely excited to see what direction they're going to be going into.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us on this album review. Let us know what you guys think. If you check out some of our recommendations for songs, we have more album reviews coming in the future. So stay tuned for those.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening.
Yep. We'll see you on the next one.
Good day and good night, mates.